Okay, this is the Collegiate webinar sight reading study hosted by Piano Marvel. First, I want to talk about, are your students prepared? I think about 9 months ago, I was at a conference and we had a booth with Piano Marvel and we were just showing the SASR, Standard Assessment of Sight Reading. And as people would come by, we'd ask them if they wanted to try taking the sight reading test. And there were a couple of people that caught my attention. One of them was this young lady who had just finished school and she had passed her piano proficiency exams. And she was kind of interested, well, how do I compare? And so we gave her the test and her score was 213. You can see from the graph below that is underperforming. And then we had another student come up and she was a little better, but I think her score was like 314 or something like that. And so she said, well, is that good? And I didn't know how to tell her, like, no, that is just not good. In fact, it's pretty bad. Well, I did come across her teacher later and I didn't know if I should tell him, but I thought, you know what, just it's better to know than to not know. So I told him, hey, you had a couple of students, they passed piano proficiency and their scores, one of them was 212, the other one was 314. And he said, great, is that good? I said, no, it's actually pathetic. So he actually became a little concerned and he said, well, what would a good sight reading score be? And I said, I would say 500 would be a really good score to pass piano proficiency. Not all schools can get 500 for their students. Some schools I've seen like 450 would be their goal that they want them to get to before they pass them in piano proficiency. But I got an email. He started giving the SASRs to his students and none of them were up there, the 500s. But about 9 months later, after using it a while and testing them really hard and getting them prepared to sight read better, he emailed me and said, guess what? I did it. One of my students for the first time got the 500. And then that next day, he told me that another student hit the 500 level. So he was excited. He had finally a benchmark. I want to show you really quickly, if you haven't seen what the SASR is, this quick video will help you understand. I have been here for 10 minutes getting my SASR score on the SASR sight reading test, and I just got a 1001. Let me show you in 3 easy steps how you can get your sight reading score with a free Piano Marvel account. First, create a free Piano Marvel account at pianomarvel.com or by downloading the iOS app from the App Store. Second, connect your device to a MIDI-enabled keyboard. If you aren't sure how to do this, check the link below for instructions. Third, sign into your Piano Marvel account, click the sight reading button, and start your sight reading test. The Standard Assessment of Sight Reading will evaluate your sight reading as you play and intelligently select new pieces for you. Once the test is finished, you will get your sight reading score along with information about how your score compares and ways that you can improve. Teachers can also get their sight reading reports of their students and classes automatically. Not only is the SASR the best way to test your sight reading, it's also an effective way to practice and improve your sight reading. Students that take the SASR regularly find that their sight reading improves drastically. Go get your score today. So, Joel, I would like for you to tell your story. So, Joel, you were a saxophone major in college, is that right?
Yeah. So, my experience was kind of interesting coming as a non-piano major through the college ranks. And as many of you, I think, are probably aware, there's the piano proficiency exam, and then, the lead up classwork that you would take, throughout multiple semesters to prepare for that. It was interesting for me because the requirements that we have and are often, I think, part of the national standard is very heavy on learning your scales and arpeggios and things like that. Went through that whole process and passed my piano proficiency exam. And immediately out of college, got my first teaching job, which was as a high school band director. And I get my job, and we're just getting in some of the first days of working here. This was before classes had started, about a week before. And the high school principal comes to me and he says, hey, we've had a number of students say that they want to have choir, so we're going to add that to your schedule. And the very next question, I thought it was interesting that the principal asked me, is he said, you can play piano, right? And my automatic reply was, well, I passed the college piano proficiency exam. And he says, okay, good. And that was good enough for him. But to be honest, in my mind, I was like, oh, crud, like I'm not ready to accompany a choir. I'm not ready to sit down and play that kind of stuff. Yeah, I could play some scales and maybe some warm-ups, but that was about it. I think if I could summarize all of this is to say, I do think that many times in the college level, we're a bit too concerned about what looks good on paper and not what's actually practical in the real world for these teachers. So as we're preparing these future music educators for going out into the field, I think it's important for us to keep that perspective that what are the skills that are actually going to translate into the jobs that they're going to have there. And in my particular case, reading piano would have been significantly of a more larger benefit than a lot of the other things that my coursework taught me. So it was an interesting lesson for me and was definitely painful for those first several years as I was teaching in band and choir to have to balance that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, Joel. Like the most valuable skill a person can get from class piano is not their scales and chords or arpeggios, not the harmonization even, but it's the ability to read music at the piano. So I would like to tell a quick story. I was at a college and I was with a TA who was teaching a class. It was the very first day. And on that first day, I was just there kind of helping and observing. And I said, hey, are you going to give them the sight reading test? And she said, no, these students don't even know where middle C is. This is a beginning class, like an introduction to the keyboard. I said, well, you know, it would be nice is if you could show them how bad they are when they started and then measure their growth. So like test them now and then test them maybe halfway through the semester or at the end of the semester and show them, hey, look how good of a teacher I am. I taught you all this stuff, how much you learned. And she's like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So we started testing the students and shocked. One of the students was reading at a 200 level. And then we saw another student. We're just watching the screen because you can see all your student scores coming in on your computer. Another student was already at 300. And she's like, how are they doing this? And then we saw a 400 score coming across. And then somebody else was reading at a 500. And then somebody else was like already into the 7, I think got an 800 something. And they're like, they're reading better than some of the piano majors. What are they doing in an intro piano course? Like, I don't even know what to do with this because my first lesson was going to be how to read middle C and like, here's a quarter note. And I said, well, aren't you at least glad you know, because that would have been embarrassing to teach your lesson and not even realize that these people are sight reading better than some piano majors. So she's like, that's great, but now I don't know where to start. So I helped her like get an idea of like how to use some of the stuff in Piano Marvel to start them at different levels wherever they are. Let me show you this story here. We saw this teacher down in Texas, Lubbock, Texas, and his class, he's got freshman high school students, and some of these students, they'd taken piano in his class for 7 months, and their sight reading was off the charts. And we couldn't figure out how his students, his freshmen in high school, not even music majors, were scoring higher than most colleges.
Aaron,
so
one correction to that, they're actually 6th graders when they start at this school.
Oh, they're 6th graders. Okay.
6th graders when they start at this school. Yeah.
That was even more impressive. Like, and they're outperforming colleges with sight reading. So yeah, Joel decided, I'm taking a trip down and I'm going to interview this guy. And so he went down, interviewed them, took some pictures, and we want to share. We created a little commercial for Piano Marvel out of that, but it lets you see kind of his classroom and what he's doing. So let's go ahead.
As a classroom teacher, when you have 22 students in one classroom, you can't give them the support that they need. without some kind of technology tool like Piano Marvel. Piano Marvel provides that constant support. Of the students that I've gotten that had private lessons, 90% of them have preferred this setting. There's all the tools in Piano Marvel. The fact that they get to go at their own pace makes them feel like they're more relaxed with it.
The practice mode helps. If there's a ledger line note that I have no clue what it is, I can search for that note using practice mode. Without Piano Marvel, I just don't think I'd be as far as I am. It keeps me like on my toes. I have 2 weeks to finish a piece. I'll get the piece done in a week.
Like, I love this. Piano Marvel kind of made it easy to like figure out how to learn things, if that makes sense. And so it made me not as nervous because I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna learn piano, like what? But Piano Marvel made that like really easy to do. It kind of breaks things up for you in a way that it's easy to digest. That way it's not overwhelming. My last Sasser score was an 806, but my highest Sasser score is an 845. Thanks.
I joke that it's my teaching assistant. I would highly recommend that anybody in a classroom setting, if you have a piano program, find a way to use Piano Marvel.
Yeah, so Josh it was very impressive what he's done with that program. We wanted to give you guys 5 ways to improve sight reading. I know I talk to a lot of teachers, and one of the hardest things for teaching sight reading is you just don't have enough material. In order to get really good at sight reading, you have to read. And then we're not talking just 100 pieces. You need to read thousands of songs to get good at sight reading. And where do you find that many pieces? And so that's one of the cool things about the Sasser is it's like unlimited sight reading material at your fingertips. So the number one top way to improve your sight reading is to take the Sasser regularly. And like that first 30 days, I would take it every single day, and you will see their sight reading improve. They're going to be reading about 500 pieces if they do that in just that very first month.
And
Number
Eric,
2.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Real quickly, let me just mention, I did this experiment with a student. You may remember Miracle. Yeah, she was homeschooled at the time, but she was really stuck with her reading, and she was stuck, if I remember her reading, she was scoring about a 350 when she would take the Sasser test. She was actually studying with another teacher, and she had come in. Her mom was trying to figure out, she said, she just doesn't seem like she's really progressing. So we said, let's try an experiment. We want you to take the Sasser test every day for a month, and let's just see what happens, So they were willing to commit to do that. And she did that every day for a month. Takes about, what would you say, 15-ish minutes, Aaron, for a kid to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's 15 minutes of very targeted sight reading practice that they're doing when you're taking the Sasser test. And as you see, as it goes through, it's finding sight reading material that's at about your level. So it's not too hard, it's not too easy, and it's challenging you where you're at. Well, with Miracle, after her 30 days, she had taken her sight reading score from about a 350 up to about a 450 in 30 days, which is basically an entire level.
That's phenomenal. 100 points is phenomenal.
100 points in a month. Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And to see that thing. So not only does doing the Sassers is it an amazing way to assess your sight reading, but it's also a really amazing way to practice your sight reading as well and improve.
I like that you mentioned she was stuck at like 300, but what if they're below that and they like need really easier stuff to like just learn their notes and stuff? Our number 2 point would be go into the method and the technique. These are learning books. So this bottom shelf here in this trophy, this is level 1, and each one of these, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, are units inside of book 1. Book 2 is on the second shelf. So my recommendation is go through level 1 and level 2 in both the method and the technique. And you will see, like if you're in the 100s, that your score will increase simply because you now know how to read the notes and you've had tons of practice on easy songs. Number 3, the Sight Reading Samurai. This was an innovation Josh Mills put together a few years back, and it is a phenomenal, it's a very different approach, but it's really cool. I want you to watch this video and see if the Sight Reading Samurai, maybe after you've done some of the other things, would be something that would help you. or your
Welcome to
students.
Sight Reading Samurai, where we're going to help you sharpen your sight reading skills. Has anyone ever asked you to read some music and you failed miserably? I know this has happened to me, and let me just say that it was super embarrassing to not be able to read something as simple as a children's piece. Developing the skill of sight reading is something that will help you to not only avoid awkward situations like this, but will also give you the ability to play much more music than you ever could have imagined. The reason Sight Reading Samurai was created was to help with this. At Piano Marvel, we realized the importance of sight reading, and Sight Reading Samurai is just one of the many resources we have created that helps to improve your sight reading ability. Now, while we'd like to think that Sight Reading Samurai is for everyone, we do realize that there might be a couple of prerequisites to using it. So first, you need to know the 12 note names like A, B, C, D. Secondly, you need to have a basic understanding of rhythm. Now, you don't need to know all your scales, arpeggios, chords, and cadences, but that will help you. It's just not required. Now, all of these skills I just listed can be learned by using Piano Marvel's method and technique section, which will also increase your sight reading. But at some point, you're going to reach a time in your piano journey where you want to seriously focus on improving your sight reading skill. And this is where Sight Reading Samurai will come in handy. Sight Reading Samurai has over 3,000 graded songs for you to read, with many of them that have been read by top-level sight readers that we know. This includes college professors with doctoral degrees from the Yale School of Music, all the way to professional gigging keyboardists based out of Nashville, Tennessee. Because of these individuals, we have been able to accurately gauge how hard one piece of music is from another and sort all of the music based off this data. The reason this is so awesome is because this gives you access to thousands of different pieces that are all around a similar level but are widely varied. In Sight Reading Samurai, what you're going to see is music from all different genres, ranging from classical music to pop music, show tunes to Disney favorites, and even hymns and jazz tunes. We believe that this is going to help you pick up on different stylistic patterns and also keep you engaged and having more fun. So you might be thinking, okay, how do I start? Let me show you a couple quick things. First, if you don't know which level you need to start at, hop on over to the Sasser and use your score to determine your starting place. As an example, if you are scored at 450, we'd recommend to start on the Sight Reading Samurai Intermediate. Once you've found what level to start with, it's now on to the reading. Now for each piece, you're going to need to get a score of 80% or higher to move on to the next piece. After achieving the minimum score, you will then unlock the next song and have the option to move on to the next exercise or replay that same exercise. Be sure that you use the prepare button. This will help make sure that you are reading the correct notes by following you and stopping when you play incorrect notes. After using prepare mode, using assess mode will allow you to play the excerpt in time without stopping. If the exercise is too fast though, you can always slow it down. Now please note that slowing down the exercise will not give you a grade. This will, however, allow you to build up your confidence to play in the excerpt at the minimum required speed to give you a grade. All right, so that pretty much sums it up. I hope you have lots of fun with Sight Reading Samurai. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email us at contactus@pianomarvel.com. Have fun and happy reading.
All right, we'll get into that one a little bit later. The fourth one is to do sight reading challenges. And we are constantly doing a challenge. Like currently, we have a Christmas challenge going on. And we have some students who read through 1,500 songs in a single month. Again, I think the best way to improve reading is to read. And so if you can incorporate some of these challenges into your program, I think that will provide your students with more opportunity to read, and they will get better. Number 5, reading from a physical book. So we talked a lot about reading from the computer, but that does not mean you shouldn't use printed materials to read. I want to show you a quick way that I've incorporated this. Now, this isn't a college class that I'm teaching, but I want to show you how I incorporate some reading with the book. It's kind of like a band. 2. You guys are really good. Find a piano and let's play that loud.
Go forward.
Move it back into a good position. Okay, we're gonna do it again. This time, say it out loud while you play. 1, 2, ready, go. Next line. Now we're gonna count it out loud. Ready, go. 1, 2. Start over at measure 1. You gotta hold that first beat. First note, 2 beats. 1, 2. Count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that gives you an idea. I got this idea from noticing that piano students were notoriously not as good at sight reading as band students, because I think band students read in ensembles a lot more than piano students do. A lot of times piano students will stop and fix notes and they'll learn their pieces, but they won't learn to read fluently. So that playing in a group ensemble, I think, is extremely helpful. So those are our 5 tips. A couple of things that you might consider helping students understand is while they're reading, there are certain skills that help them read better. Number 1, don't look at your hands. I remember the first time that I really focused on this, it was one of the things that helped me improve my sight reading more than anything. Learning the geography of the keyboard by feel and trusting that I can find those notes without looking was really hard, because even when every time I play a wrong note, my eyes would instantly go down and say, what did I play wrong? Instead of using my ear to try to figure that out. And that really just took a lot of just focus on not looking at your hands. Another thing that helps is to read easy music so that you don't look at your hands. If you can give your students really easy music that they feel like they don't need to look at their hands with, they will develop a really good habit. Second is looking ahead. Don't fix mistakes while you're reading. Just keep on moving and learn to live with the mistakes and focus on what's coming up. Again, if you can give them really easy music, this will help them develop a habit of looking further ahead, because their brain's not absorbed with what's going on currently. They're freed up to look ahead and develop that habit. Reading things below your level, we kind of already talked about that. It allows your eyes to scan the big picture and to create eye movement and habits. A lot of people think that sight readers only look forward, but good sight readers actually look all around the page. They don't focus so much on individual notes as patterns, but their eyes are free to looking backwards and looking forward. So when you read easy stuff, it actually helps you develop those good reading habits. All right, tracking your students' sight reading growth. Why do you think this is important? Let's ask somebody here. Joel, why do you think it's important to track students' growth?
I think this is one of the things that is many times kind of been a missing piece in the music education scene. I was telling Aaron the other day, in education, you've got like your math classes and they can do their math tests and give you math scores. And you've got all these other empirical measures of like how students are performing in different areas. And many times in music, we don't have very much of that to grab onto like other subjects do, right? When I was teaching at the high school that I mentioned earlier, the best measurement that my school principal had for measuring my success as a teacher was how many kids were enrolling and, you know, if they went to the concert, right? It's like, well, was it a good concert or not, right? But it's very, very kind of subjective. And one of the things I love about this is that it gives us a way to measure that. But from the student perspective, I think too, there's a motivation factor. We see this in video games all the time, right? People see like, oh, I want to get to this next level. I want to get to this next score.
Motivation's a huge thing. Did you ever hear Josh Mills' story about when he first started? Because he was taking a college program in music and he started taking the Sasser. Josh, would you be able to tell us just a little bit about your story there?
I started off, I had like a 200 or 300 level sight reading score.
What
And
year in school were you in your program, and what was your program?
music technology. And I had been trying to, like you said, like learn a lot of hard pieces, but I had never really focused on reading. And my teacher was very passionate about telling me that reading's important, but I had never taken the time to do it. And then, you know, everything that you've said here is what I basically did. I did the SASR for 30 days, and then I realized I needed to do the method. And so, you know, within 2 or 3 months, my sight reading score went from 200 or 300 on a good day to, you know, 600 or 700. And it was just, you know, like you're
That's
saying,
crazy good.
The topography of the keyboard, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. And what's your current score now?
it's over 1,000.
That's astounding. That's fun to see a college student, not even a piano major, come in and now reading over 1,000. Really good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
fun.
We'll talk about this graph really quickly. We went in and we tested 26,000 university students and their sight reading ability. And we found that the average sight reading ability is 429. We would like to test over 100,000 students, and we'd love your help. What we would like to do is find out with your music majors, your piano majors, and say, what's the piano majors average sight reading score? And then also like your freshman music ed majors, how do your freshman students stack up against the national average? So we'd like your help in helping gather more data so that we can get this information out to people in the industry. I think the more data they have, what's going to happen is you're going to find that it inspires teachers to think of better teaching tools and techniques to improve sight reading. Think of it like I think it was, what year was it? Somebody ran and broke the 4-minute mile mark. They had that little benchmark, that 4-minute mile. Nobody had ever beaten that. And so people were looking at that thinking, what can I do to improve my running style so I can beat that number? Joel had a really cool story that he told me yesterday about what he did in his band. He had some trumpet students, and he couldn't get. Go ahead and tell that story, Joel, real quick.
Yeah, no, you know, I had an issue in my band classes where there was some new music that we wanted to perform, but there was quite a few notes in this music that was above the range by a little bit that these trumpet players could hit the notes for. And so I was trying to figure out how to address this, because the rest of the band was ready to play this music, but my trumpet section just really struggled with getting their range up. So we came up with this challenge. We called it the Screamathon, which is kind of like a reference to being a screaming trumpet player, right? But basically what it was is I would periodically test the trumpets and see who could play the highest note. We would just go chromatically up, who could hit the highest note, and whoever could hit it, I'd put their name on the board and what note it was that they hit. And then we were constantly, you know, but it became this kind of friendly competition in the trumpet section that, you know, these other kids wanted to see if they could get their name on the board. And within a number of, you know, a couple months, these entire trumpet section had extended their range by, I think, 3 or 4, you know, notes, which was exactly what we needed to do to do that. So this idea of like having a measurement, having a goal, right? We sometimes look at this thing they call the SMART goal, right? Which and it kind of breaks, it's an acronym for like all these things, but your goal needs to be measurable. That's what the M is for, right? And it needs to be obtainable. So something we were challenging them to not necessarily hit something totally out of their range or whatever, but it was really just to figure out where they were and then improve from there, right? And by doing that, you know, we got much better results, and we were able to do the songs that we wanted to do. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think the point of that story is that human nature is that they want to do hard things and push themselves to new boundaries, but they need to see what those boundaries are. They need to see something to shoot for. And
they need a good system. They need a good system in place for that, right? And that's yeah.
And so I think if you can find a way to leverage this motivation and this like goal setting, I think your students will find the why to the sight reading. Why do I want to sight read? Well, they want to hit that goal. And when they are motivated, they will work to do it. Like Josh Mills, he found a motivation. He wanted to learn to sight read, and he moved his score from 200 to over 1,000. That is powerful. And that is, I think, what teaching is for me, is to find the ways to motivate my students to work.